Introducing the Parameta Bliss Podcast, a show dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of achieving optimal health naturally as you transition into perimenopause and menopause. Get ready to join your host, Dr. Seth Yates, an experienced naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and kinesiologist, as he shares his wealth of knowledge acquired from over 40,000 patient visits and 15 years in working with perimenopausal females. Welcome to the Parameta Bliss Podcast.
Hey, this is Doc Yates. Welcome to the Parameta Bliss Podcast. This will be a quick episode today, but I just want to know and to discuss what is holding you back. So, at this point, we've been through a lot of different episodes. We've talked a lot of different topics, and we've had enough information that you should have been able to see significant, dramatic changes in your health, in your hormones, and in your life. So a lot of people have taken that step, and if you haven't, this is always the question I have, is that what is holding you back from feeling better? Most of the time, it's not an external force. It's usually you, and it's usually a mindset issue at this point. So I want to go over some of the different questions that you may be asking yourself. Some of these questions you may be asking yourself subconsciously, and until we've actually said it out loud, you haven't even thought about it. So we're just going to go over some of these things and just address them. So most of it, I guess, it comes down to fear. Some of the questions that you might have for yourself about this would be like, well, can I even do this? People's fear of not being able to do something, and then that worry of, well, if I do this, or I try to do this and I can't, am I then going to be in a worse off position? Because now I've not only got this feeling, the same feelings, now I have the feeling of failure. And I feel like people are scared of failure, and I feel like that is probably the biggest issue. Any of the people that I've worked with that are successful, like, failure is just part of the game. Like, it's just, a failure is just a learning step, and all you need to do is just accept the fact that failure is a very possible outcome, but then you can just slightly adjust your strategy and move on and continue until you don't fail. You basically fail until you don't, and then you just keep going. There was someone I was listening to, and he was saying, when you first start off, you're going to suck at this, and then you're going to gradually suck less at it, and then eventually you're going to suck so little that you're actually good at it. That's kind of the mindset you have to have when you're starting out, is that don't expect to rocket off the start. Expect that things will go wrong, but then you're still going to be able to keep moving forward despite that. Other questions that people have is that, well, even if I know that I could do this, how do I know this is going to work for me? And that's not so much a question of yourself, it's a question of fear of will the system work? With the amount of information that we've been able to give you so far, and the different aspects of things that can play a role, it makes you realize how many factors there are and how many factors can play a role. But each one of those things can be addressed in a simple system to get the effect that you want. So the system will work. If you can put your time into it, the system will work. There will be times, like I said just on the last point, that you will have to move and adapt. There might be, for instance, there's a case that I was working with. Hormones were balanced. We've got their thyroid checked. Everything was great. The weight was being stubborn, but it was a cortisol issue. They were under major stress, so we started supporting their adrenal glands, getting their cortisol back in check, and then the weight started moving, and then they started getting all the other benefits of what they were looking for. So the system has the ability to adapt just like you do. So don't let that be something that's keeping you, holding you back. And next thing, and this kind of overlaps point number one, what if you fail? You probably at some point will fail. Something will, there will be a snag in the line, but that's why you have people helping you out, and that's why you have, whoever you're working with ideally has an experienced system that can move and adapt to you. Another question people have, what if you can't maintain? So what if you reach your goals, but then you can't maintain them? This, I find, kind of depends on the path that you took to reach your goals. Like, I've mentioned this in a previous podcast. Generally, I find the best way to reach your goals is not just to do a lot of one thing, is to do a little bit of multiple things. Because there's usually multiple imbalances that are keeping you back. And if you just try to do one thing, you have to do that one thing really, really, really hard to compensate for all those other little things that you could have addressed easily if you had met them head on. So, an example would be, I've seen people and they've lost weight and they've done it through working with only personal trainers and, say, bodybuilders. So they've been doing a very, very rigid routine and an extreme, what I would consider to be like extreme style of dieting, like something that you could not maintain. And because of that, once they're done their fitness competition they wanted to do, I know that it's going to be virtually impossible to maintain what they've accomplished with it, because it's just so extreme that they didn't have the other things balanced out. So as long as your goal is a reasonable goal, and you're using all this information so that you can address all these little imbalances, eventually it won't even feel like you're actually doing any work. It'll become just part of a routine. And when it's part of a regular routine and it's simple, you won't find it difficult to maintain at all. Next question. Is it even worth your time? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth the effort? This all depends on how far off you are from where you want to be. Like, if your goal is that, well, I only want to lose 5 pounds. That's it. For a lot of people to make radical changes for that, it might not be worth it. But let's say you needed to lose 50 pounds, you went to your doctor and he's like, well, if you don't lose this, I'm going to have to put you on all these medications, or you might be, you're setting yourself up, you're going to need some sort of heart issue later on, or surgery. Who knows? Or if you're under, say, a lot of pain often is the motivator. It's whether it's mental pain, emotional pain, physical pain. So the further you are out of alignment will usually determine the amount of pain, or at least the further you are perceived to be out of alignment, the greater the pain, and then the greater the motivation. So it's hard to give like a concrete answer for this. But I would say that anything you can do to move more into balance, especially using simple little tips and tricks, that is always worth it. Whereas in the other example I gave, where it wasn't just that I wanted to be in good health. They wanted to be, have an 8-pack and have like 3% body fat. Like, if I could speak today, that would be great. But that's not really something that that long term is like a great value to you. It's great because you wanted to accomplish that one thing, so you wouldn't be able to maintain that. So that's up to you. Like, I find a lot of people say they're coming to see me for really bad arthritic pain. They're motivated because they want to be able to move around. They want to be able to play with their kids. They want to, or sometimes their grandkids. They want to be able to do the things that they want to do. So I guess it depends on whatever you're working with. How much is it disrupting your ideal life? And that will be your motivation. Now, the other question, and this really throws a lot of people off too, is that what will other people think if they knew that I was doing this? Like, if someone knew that you're balancing your hormones, would that be a big issue? What would they think about that? And how much would that bother you, depending on what they think? There's definitely more, I have found, to be a gender bias in this. For females, when they're balancing their hormones, it doesn't seem that anyone really worries about it. They're just like, oh, that's great, congratulations. On the other hand, though, if males are taking testosterone therapy, it's definitely viewed differently. Even though if you're taking it, not if you're taking it just from like bodybuilding perspective, but because you're older and you have low testosterone, it's definitely more of a different bias that way. Or what if someone finds like, oh, you're out with friends and then you're eating food that's different than where they're eating. They're like, oh, what are you, on some kind of diet or something? That bothers people. I don't know why people say that, but it's usually because people are saying that because they want to be able to do it too, but they're stuck up on some of these fear points too. And it's almost like that crab in a bucket syndrome, where one crab in a bucket on its own will climb out no problem. 2 crabs or 3 crabs in a bucket, one crab goes to climb out and the other 2 pull it back in. And that is very common. When you start doing things to improve your health and the other people who are with you are not able to take that step, rather than being supporting you, they're usually going to be trying to pull you back because it's going to make them feel better about themselves for the fact that they couldn't do it. So, a little bit of a ramble today. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you were able to find out if there's any kind of blockages or mental blocks that you're having that's preventing you from being your best self, and you can get past that. This is Doc Yates, signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to the Paramena Bliss podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and visit paramenobliss.com for more valuable information on how you can thrive during your transition through perimenopause. Join our community of like-minded women who are dedicated to achieving optimal health naturally, and stay up to date with the latest tips, tricks, and advice from Dr. Seth Yates. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Paramena Bliss podcast.